Hello, you're watching the TelecomTV Summit on the Green Network and our panel discussion on Towards the Net Zero Telco. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content. What do telcos have to do if they want to be seen as net zero? How will they actually back up their public commitments to net zero carbon goals? And which aspects of today's networks are responsible for most greenhouse gas emissions? Well, with the help of our guests, we are going to find out. And joining me on the programme today are Francesca Serravalle, who is Head of Infrastructure and Energy at Vodafone UK, Jacek Hutyra, who is Climate Officer for Orange Poland, Pedro Torres, CTO of Wireless Outdoor Networks for Europe at Commscope, and Philip Laidler, who's Partner and MD Consulting with STL Partners. Hello everyone, it's really good to see you all. Thanks so much for taking part in our discussion. Well, let me first of all ask, what is the internationally agreed definition of net zero, if in fact there is one, and who sets the guidelines? Jacek, perhaps I could talk to you first about this one. You're Climate Officer at Orange Poland. What do you see as the definition of net zero?
Yeah, so actually this is quite a tricky one because there is no one single internationally recognized definition that everybody is legally bound to follow, which opens up some space for some actors to play around with words. Net zero, climate neutrality, net climate neutrality, and sometimes it means the same thing, sometimes it doesn't. Of course, there are guidelines you can actually use. You can go to SBTI, Science Based Targets Initiative. You can go to GHG Protocol, Greenhouse Gas Protocol. You can go to the UN guidance for corporate net zero or avoiding greenwashing. So there are sources where you can inspire yourself. But the important thing is when you're a telco or when you're any other type of a company, whatever you promise, whatever you announce, you just need to explain briefly what kind the term that you are using. At Orange Polska, we are following, just like the Orange Group globally, the SBTI science-based targets for net zero, which means that we are actually looking at the entire emissions across the full value chain of our activities, both own emissions and the emissions of our suppliers and customers.
Thanks very much, Jacek. And as you say, it's important to be clear and to convey what it is you're trying to achieve and get the message out. Francesca, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on this, on the overall definition of what we mean by net zero?
I guess there is a wide consensus within the industry that net zero means that there is a balance between the emission that we produce into the atmosphere and then the emission that we reduce or take out from the atmosphere. And in terms of guidelines, I think there isn't just a single answer or a single entity. On one side, we have standards body, ITU, ETSI, 3GPP that are defining energy saving feature, working group, protocols to exchange energy related data. We have GSMA and JC that are helping us to define the path to net zero through science-based target. We have GSMA that we have NGMN that are trying to drive better collaboration within the industry through standardized KPI. And we also have, ranking companies, reporting companies like organizations like the CDP that helps defining reporting methodology for scope 1, 2, and 3. So I think we need to look at it in a holistic manner.
Thank you, Francesca. And Pedro, what are your thoughts on the definition of net zero?
Yeah, I would agree with Francesca. I think the common definition of net zero means that you bring down your greenhouse emissions to a point where it's essentially close to zero, and any residual emissions can be compensated or reabsorbed from the atmosphere by oceans and forests and so forth, or through other means with carbon sequestration, etc. And I think what is really important is the fact that we have, an agreement from Paris, where we should really aim to 1.5 degrees increase in global temperature compared to pre-industrial levels. And at this point, with the current pledges and commitments that we have from industry and countries, we will not go below 2.4, which means essentially that we are going to see, if we don't do anything, we're going to see some really adverse effects of the global warming. So overall, this is something that falls in the umbrella of the United Nations, and there is a committee of scientists and experts that are advising on how we should do this and how we should track all the improvements and activities that we are doing to become net zero, hopefully in the second half of this century.
Yeah, thanks very much, Pedro. And that leads us very nicely into our next question, which is, what are the driving forces that will push a telco towards net zero? Is it the need to do good? Is it the need to follow the Paris Agreement and as part of a strategic corporate program, or is it more seen as a cost saving? It's more of a business use case for the telco. Francesca, what is driving telcos towards net zero?
Well, definitely doing good for us. And this is why, as we deliver our Tech 2025 vision, as we drive our vision to become a telco cloud, we are really integrating the sustainability goal into our purpose. We are defining a sustainability agenda and a sustainability vision and a strategy that helps to deliver this vision through clear timeline. Our timeline are very ambitious. We plan to be net zero for scope 1 and scope 2 by 2030 and half scope 3 emission by 2030 and be fully net zero for scope 1, 2 and 3 by 2040. Those are the group timeline. UK wise, we even have more ambitious timeline as we plan to be net zero for scope 1 and 2 by 2027. Now, in order to achieve those timeline, we have also defined a pipeline of project and programs, and we have created a committee where our execs are supporting us through this journey, through granting us resources, granting us funding, and helping us to unblock some issues, some escalated issues that come out during the delivery process. And I think more important, one thing that for me it's important to highlight, that while sustainability now has become a key driver for key decision-making process at business and operational level, it's now mainstream for us, and it's part of our BAU and daily life.
Thanks, Francesca. So some serious corporate support behind your efforts there at Vodafone. Jacek, what about Orange Polska? What's driving your commitment to move towards net zero?
Yeah, before that, I actually have a provocative response to the question, because I'm convinced that it doesn't really matter what your rationale is, what your reason is. You may do it because you have principles, because you want to do good. You may do it because your owner tells you to do so. You may do it because your investors require more and more in terms of ESG or climate. The important thing is that if at the end of the day you produce tangible results, as in reducing your emissions rapidly and substantially, it's perfect. And today, the reality is that actually the stars are aligned for accelerating climate ambitions, because let's take energy. Energy is a key resource in our business. Today, renewable energy is cheaper than conventional fossil fuel sources. And at the same time, it's way less harmful for the environment. And at the same time, if you move from fossil fuels to renewables, you increase your independence in terms of geopolitical energy sources and so on and so forth. So whatever your reason is, as long as you can prove that you reduce your emissions, it's perfect. At Orange Poland, as in Orange Group, similarly to what Francesca was saying, we have global ambitions. We are targeting net zero by 2040 for all the emissions, and the first milestone is 2025. And in Poland, we have a difficult situation because as of today, at the national level, 7% of Polish electricity is produced from coal, which makes it quite difficult to decarbonize, which is why we have to go faster and we have to do more. So energy structure, transforming our energy mix from 0% of renewables 2 years ago to 60% of renewables by 2025 is for us, and we're accelerating on this path, and we have quite good progress there thanks to long-term power purchase agreement contracts from new renewable sources in Poland.
Great, so some major drivers there, and as you say, it doesn't matter too much why you're doing things or how you're doing things. It's just do them, and let's move on and let's see some action. Pedro, let's come over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So I would agree with what has been said, and in the sense that there is a combination of factors that are driving this journey toward net zero. One that we can't forget is, of course, all the public policies that the governments and institutions are laying out, so that industries and the energy sector all become more efficient. And the transition to renewable sources is greatly accelerated. So I think the governments have a significant also role to play here. Then there is the economic benefits, of course, which has already been mentioned, that if you are more efficient, if you use less energy in running your networks, then it will be better for the bottom line of the company, right? So that's extremely important, especially given the rise in the energy cost that we have seen in the last 12 months with the war in Ukraine. And then there is the third leg would be the consumers, the customers, which I think are becoming more and more aware of the importance of being sustainable and running sustainable business. And especially the younger generations are looking into how companies are doing in this. And there will be a comparison and how you do in terms of comparing with your competitors. There will be a brand awareness and recognition in this area as well. So I think it's also crucial for customers. And then there's also the investors part. So investors are becoming more concerned about the risks and the consequences of global warming and how the companies they invest are tackling this problem. So the investor side is also important to take into consideration.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Yes, indeed. Philip, let me come across to you now, because I want to move on. We've talked about the motivating factors, the driving forces here, but what are you seeing in the industry from the work that you're doing, STL? What's the real level of support from the telecoms industry? Just how engaged are they, and who's actually leading this work?
Thanks. I'd actually separate out the two questions. How engaged are they? Who's leading? Because what we see, and we've been looking and benchmarking about 70 telcos and comparing them on their net zero journey, as we say. And I think, overall, the industry is very committed. People want to make this happen. They want to drive towards net zero, but they're just at different stages in their journey. Some have been doing it for longer. They've got further. They put more in place. And it's not so much that they've got a lower carbon footprint, although those who started sooner generally do. It's just that they've got more of that machinery in place, the organizational machinery to deliver the net zero vision. So they've done more planning. They baked it into their operations, a little bit like Francesca was explaining. It's those that are further down the journey. It's more business as usual. Sustainability is a factor in everything they do. In the day-to-day decisions, it's linked to incentive plans, it's linked to evaluation methodologies, the decisions that are taken day-to-day and strategically incorporate sustainability, incorporate net zero. And so what I would say is that some are further in their journey of becoming sort of fully attuned and focused on meeting their committed deliverables, and others are earlier. And are, in a sense, they're playing catch up because they haven't got around to bringing these behaviors. And it's a journey, and you never get there. You're just progressing there. So what we would say is European operators typically are further in their journey. they've started sooner, they've put more in place, and sort of North American, Asia, and Middle East, and maybe African are further behind. But that isn't, I wouldn't say, down to commitment. It's down to when they started and how far they've got. Is more a function of how long they've been doing it.
Thanks, Philip. And we should never underestimate how long these journeys can be. Just look at the digital transformation journey, for instance. Jacek, we'll come to you in a moment, but first let's go over and hear from Francesca.
Yeah, I guess telco industry is quite engaged. I guess every CSP has a well-defined sustainability agenda. And just to really prove the engagement from a Vodafone perspective, I want to list some of the initiatives that we're doing. We are adopting circular economy through reuse and repurpose and recycle our equipment. We are renovating our fleet. 75% are already electric. We are transforming our network as a green platform. We are innovating our business model and partnership model to become a digital service provider with the main driver to enable new ways of working and new ways of living that will deliver a more sustainable society. And this links with the doing good driver. We are helping our customers to drive their green agenda and sustainable agenda as well, co-innovating with them, creating synergy between the 5G, the IoT, and AI to deliver smart vertical solution that will drive operational efficiency. And we are also, deploying renewals at our core sites and signing PPAs and much more. But I think I can see that, the engagement across the industry is quite proven now. It's becoming really mainstream.
Thanks, Francesca. Jacek, over to you for some comments here. Are you seeing the same level of engagement through the industry? Are you seeing certain telcos further along this journey than others?
I wanted to react to something very important that Philip said. The sooner you start, the sooner you'll be ready and the farther you will go. And actually, inaction can be quite risky, because if you do nothing, if you try to sit out the whole point, one day you may wake up and it's game over for you, at least on some markets where with time more and more will be required. So obviously we can see this divergence on different markets, but often also in a given market you can see bigger players more advanced and smaller players trying to check out and see if you can continue doing nothing. But I agree with what Francesca was saying as well. The sooner you start, the further you go, and we have today very good results at Orange Polska. We have already announced cutting our own emissions, Scope 1 and 3, by about 1/3 versus 2015. And we are very much advanced towards our 2025 goal. But this is thanks to actually starting this a few years ago. This is not a transformation. This is not a change that you can do overnight. This makes it even more important to actually take the first step and start going towards these net zero objectives.
Thanks very much, Jacek. And Philip, as Jacek was saying there, the sooner you start, the further you can go. So what are the steps that a telco who perhaps hasn't started yet or is just on this early stage of the journey, what are the steps they need to take in order to become net zero? Is there any sort of industry-wide process that it can implement?
There are industry-level initiatives, and most of those, like the one for the GSMA, are around disclosure. So they're around reporting on what your current footprint is, your carbon emissions are. And that's really where you should be starting. You've got to gather the data. You've got to form a view. What's my current emissions? And there are some, you can get going with some rough and simple, crude, factor-based reporting, and then refine that over time. But you've got to start off with your footprint. Once you've got your footprint and you're disclosing it, what we would recommend is doing a little bit of benchmarking. Look around, learn from your peers, see what others do, how they're doing it, what are their targets, what are they committing to, how are they going about it, do a little bit of learning, and then you come up with a hypothesis of what you think you want to achieve. You take that hypothesis within the organization and you get deep organizational commitment around the key programs, like Francesca was describing, that will deliver that commitment. And I think it's really important to get the buy-in, get the whole company behind it, get all the functions committed, senior right the way down, middle management to the levels, and then you can take that plan together and you can commit that to the outside world. And I think that's what we would recommend. We would recommend that you build in that consensus and a clear view on how you're going to get there before you go out and make any big commitments. Now, I know not everyone's done it that way. A lot of companies set the goals and the commitment and then figured out how they were going to do it. And there's always going to be a bit of that. But that kind of 4-stage process is what we recommend to our clients to get them to a place where they can make good, strong commitments that they know are comparable to their peers and that they've got a plan how to get there.
Good advice there, Philip. Thanks very much for that. And Francesca, from your experience, what do you recommend a telco needs to do to become net zero?
Yeah, I'll say 3 words: commit, invest, and deliver. And this needs to be done with a top-down approach where we have a clear defined purpose, vision, and strategy, all underpinned by a strong governance, which define best practice and drive synergy across the business unit, as this is sustainability. It's a corporate wide initiative. And only if we do so, then we are able to decouple the traffic, the data growth with the energy consumption and the carbon emission. And at Vodafone, we can proudly say that while our traffic is growing, the energy remain flat and the carbon emission is being reduced. In terms of collaboration, I think that as we go towards the digital society, we need to drive more collaboration around the ecosystem, because connectivity is going to be part of the ICT stack. So we need to work together with the platform providers, application providers as well, and have an ecosystem-wide approach to be able to really track the service footprint as we're moving from a product-centric business model to a solution-centric business model.
Great, thanks very much, Francesca, for that. We talk about telecoms as if it's one entity or it's homogeneous throughout the industry, but we know it's not. Are there some aspects of the business of telecoms, of the network, that are more difficult to work on than others when it comes to looking at reducing greenhouse gas emissions? Or is it a case that no matter what part of the network you're looking at, you're going to have problems and it's going to be quite a challenge? Francesca, can we come back to you at Vodafone UK? What do you see? Do you see it's been as a homogeneous problem, or are there certain areas particularly you can target?
Well, I think delivering a green network, it's a challenge really, and that's because it requires the implementation of a multi-year program. And I will make a few examples here. As part of our, green network initiative, we are optimizing the network, which means we are powering down some legacy platform. We are closing some sites, and which implies that we need to redesign the topologies, and that is a multi-year program. In parallel, we're also innovating and transforming our network, virtualizing, making API and cloud native as well, which will deliver some benefit in terms of energy consumption. And this is, again, it's a multi-year program. We are trying to speed up the migration from legacy to new platforms to really minimize the need of two technology stacks. We are transforming our operation. We are remodernizing the OSS, BSS stack. We are making all the network operation AI and telemetry driven to automate the provisioning, to deploy, to make the network self-maintained, self-organized, enabling preventive maintenance, remote support. Through smart sites, we are also creating the digital twin of our base station estates, again, to enable automated provision and remote support. And this is it's an ongoing program, and it's a multi-year program. So we have developed an energy big data platform, and we have a roadmap of use case that span multi-years. So I would say is that really to go from a present mode of operation to a future mode of operation that deliver a green networks really takes time, require resources, funding, and really executive support. And considering the challenges that the industry has, we have to commit capex. We have the competition is increased, the customers are becoming more demanding, and the revenue are shrinking. You really need to make sustainability part of your DNA to drive this. And at Vodafone, it is part of our DNA.
Thank you, Francesca. There's a lot of activities there you're working on. Thanks for sharing all those with us. Pedro, let's come across to you and look at the challenge that we face as an industry here.
Yeah, I think there are a number of tangible activities or initiatives that you can start, and those unfortunately are very rewarding, but they take quite a number of years. And I'm thinking like some operators, some of these are represented here, this transition from copper to fiber. So we know that the old copper networks tend to consume quite a lot of power, as opposed to fiber to the home FTTH networks, which are more efficient in that sense. So that, of course, that journey takes a long time, but the benefits are significant. And then the same way for mobile, to be able to shut down 2G and 3G systems earlier without affecting the user experience and your customers. That's also something that will also translate into less emissions and less energy being used in the network, as well as the IT systems. That is also another part, data centers, etc., that can consume a lot of energy and power. But from a vendor perspective, I think it's very clear that we vendors, and Commscope is one of the leading vendors in the physical infrastructure part of the business, the wireless and DAS systems, etc. So we take this very seriously, and we are investing quite a lot of R&D in making our products more efficient. And like us, I think everyone in the industry is doing the same, trying to make sure that our products demand less energy, or can help the RAN to consume less energy. So that would be one thing, to invest and deploy more efficient antennas and radios, etc. The other thing that you can do is to right size your network. So instead of deploying the same solution everywhere for your LTE upgrades or 5G deployments, make sure that you deploy the right solution for each and every site. So it doesn't make sense to deploy, in my view, for instance, a large, massive MIMO radio if the traffic in the site is already little or with moderate load, right? So there are other alternatives that can consume less power, 30 to 50% less power, and can provide very competitive performance. And then overall, try to make sure that the products, the solution that you deploy out there in networks can last for longer, right? So that you don't end up replacing equipment every 2 to 3 years, which is very costly for our customers, but equally so for the environment. So I would say these things can really help in this transition, in this journey to net zero.
Thank you, Pedro. And as you say, it's industry-wide, this challenge. It's telcos and vendors working together. Jacek, let's come across to you for your final comments on this move towards a net zero telco.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer a little bit of hope. It is challenging. This journey cannot happen overnight. We need time, we need resources, we need efforts, we need commitment, we need tone at the top. But we can get there, and our situation as the digital industry, understood in a wide sense, is way, way better than some other industries, take aviation or steel or cement. There are so many other industries that have much, much bigger than we do, because at least we have solutions. We just need to commit and to act and to deliver on them. And also, obviously, we have to manage our emissions. We have to get to net zero, but we are in a very specific situation of a digital industry where our solutions can also help other industries to reduce their emissions through big data, through AI, through different services that allow for them to better manage their industrial processes, their transportation, or whatever else they're doing, where digital services can help for them on their challenges regarding the green transformation. So yes, it's difficult. Yes, we have to do it. Yes, we have to get to net zero, but there is hope, and our situation is not the worst one. So yeah, we just need to act.
We do indeed. Well said there. And you're absolutely right. We should remember that telecoms can help other industries with their net zero goals as well. Let's come across finally to Philip to round out our responses on this panel.
Yeah, I'd echo all the points that have been made. What I would say is that actually some of these choices are difficult because they are compromises, and there are forces in two directions. So you want to get perhaps some of the more performant, the latest technology, but at the same time you want to extend the life of what you've got. Both of those are, there's a trade-off here, and there are a lot of trade-offs, and you've got to have a clear strategy. But I think if you focus on avoiding waste, avoiding duplication, extending life, getting smarter so you can direct resources and energy in a more focused, pinpointed way. Those are kind of key principles you need to bake into your strategy. And yeah, you will have to face those compromises, and you'll have to figure out through. But if you keep that front of mind, particularly the reducing waste, I think, and there are lots of different forms of waste. I think that there are some big changes that operators can make, and I think actually there are a few areas where telcos can be quite disruptive, and they can be quite disruptive to traditional models of energy use. And I think we're working on a few of those. We're going to see potentially the opportunity for, yes, this gradual continuous improvement, but perhaps some more disruptive opportunities as well.
Thanks, Philip. Positive note to end there. I like that. We must end it there, though, for now. Thank you all very much for taking part in our discussion today and sharing your views. Now, if you're watching this on day 2 of the Green Network Summit, then please do send us your questions. I'm sure you have loads, and we'll answer as many of them as we can in our live Q&A show, which is later today, coming up very soon, in fact. Don't forget to view the other panels and keynote interviews in this year's summit. But for now, thank you for watching and goodbye.